All right, welcome back to another edition of the SERMAblast. I'm Rich Lenkov, CEO and founder of the Sports and Entertainment Risk Management Alliance. And the point of our SERMAblast is to deal with breaking legal news in the sports and entertainment area. And we've got breaking news out of LA yesterday. We've got a guest from ZFZ Law, Rachel Fiset. Rachel, welcome to the SERMAblast.
Thanks for having me.
Rachel, you're a legal analyst, an attorney also. You've been all over the news on many issues, including this one. So yesterday, like I said, in L.A., a jury came back with a bit of a mixed jury against former film producer Harvey Weinstein, who was already serving time in New York for a similar conviction. Walk us through what the jury did yesterday.
So what the jury did was they found him guilty out of 3 of the 7 accounts for which he was accused, and all 3 of the accounts that they found him guilty of relate to one woman. So there were 4 women that came forward in this trial, making up the 7 counts, but the jury was hung on 3 of the 4 women's allegations that the prosecution made, but solidly came back with a unanimous verdict on 3 charges as it related to one incident with one of the women.
Like I said, he's already serving time in New York for a conviction 3 years ago of rape and sexual assault. How does that work? Does he serve the length of that term first because it's first in time, and then he would serve the remainder of the time in California for this conviction if it's upheld? That assumes both of them are upheld. In New York, the appellate court has agreed to look at that. So assuming that's upheld, would he have to serve New York first and then California?
Yeah, that's what he has to do. So this doesn't affect his sentence in New York, which is 23 years. And his sentence in Los Angeles has not been set yet. There's actually a hearing going forward as it relates to aggravating circumstances, which means that on the 3 counts that he was found guilty of, he'll get somewhere probably in the range between 18 and 24 years. He was facing up to 60 if he was found guilty of all 7 counts. But effectively, he serves his time in New York. They stick him in, a plane, and he comes and serves his time in California if he's still alive. So as between serving 18 years, 24 years, 60 years, frankly, I think it all just means that he is going to spend the rest of his life behind bars.
What message, Rachel, do you think this sends to victims of rape, victims of sexual assault, especially considering the way this trial went? Very notably, one of Weinstein's attorneys took a very aggressive tone with none other than the current wife of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He called her, and I'm going to quote this, just another bimbo who slept with Harvey Weinstein to get ahead. That drew some strong responses in the courtroom. But because there was a hung jury, inherently, the jury did not feel that the prosecution made their case, at least against Weinstein with some of these accusers. So what message do you think it sends to the Me Too movement and to abuse victims in general? What does this verdict say?
So this jury really took their time, and they were not unanimous on anything other than the 3 counts that they found him guilty of. Then they were actually mixed among themselves on the other ones as well. One of the counts was 10-2, one was 8-4. So the jury seems to have really taken their time and weighed the evidence as it related to each and every factual allegation. So I think that shows that they were being careful. As for the defense's tactics, I thought they were somewhat appalling in this day and age. They did have some success, though, as it related to the First Lady of California. But I think the jury was just weighing facts and evidence. And the defense tactics really set the Me Too movement back maybe 50, 60 years. I mean, they were not respectful. They took a very large risk in how they defended the case.
Rachel, the state brought in evidence of a pattern of behavior that the defendant engaged in. that's a very important legal tool that prosecutors use. We saw it most prominently used in the prosecution of Bill Cosby, which was later overturned. But talk to us a little bit about the legal strategy involved in trying to establish that a defendant who is accused of sexual abuse and rape is engaging in a long-term pattern and practice, and that should be used as evidence in this particular case.
So you're allowed to bring that evidence in if in certain circumstances, and here they were allowed to bring that evidence in. And that was basically the case, was look, he had an absolute pattern of how he committed these sexual assaults, and he would bring a woman to his hotel room or go to their hotel room. He would have them in a small space, and he would go through basically a series of acts. And all of the women who, prior to the case, did not know each other, came and corroborated that that's what a sexual assault looked like by Harvey Weinstein. And it matched up with how they also prosecuted the New York case. He had a modus operandi, which means he had a pattern and practice of committing the crime.
So that modus operandi was, at least in part, that Harvey Weinstein, who, again, our listeners and viewers should know, at one point, not too long ago, was among the most powerful producers in all of Hollywood. You know, would be a perpetual, perennial, yearly Oscar nominee, spent a lot of money to gain acclaim and Oscars. So this is a powerful individual. Part of that MO that you mentioned was to bring actresses into his hotel room to purportedly test them. We now know that he's been convicted of actually using that as a front to sexually assault them. But, you know, we are an organization devoted to risk management. And what effect do you think convictions like this have had on the industry in general? Obviously, times have changed, and no one would ever go to someone's hotel room again, we hope. But what greater effect do you think it's had on the film industry?
I think it is sending the message in some circumstances, and again, I don't know if in all circumstances, but it is sending the message that the Me Too movement meant to send, which was you can't get away with using your power and to advance people's careers, which is what he was trying to basically say he would do in order to commit sexual assault or use women in a sexual way. And so that is the message the convictions send, is that you will get caught. People are onto this and it's not okay. Again, we had a mixed verdict here though. And so I think the message is not as strong as it could be, but it is a wake-up call to how the entertainment industry, and I'm sure other industries, work. But specifically someone as powerful as Harvey Weinstein, just using that power to get whatever he wanted and committing what at the end of the day is the crime of rape.
Rachel, last question here. You mentioned that the jury was deadlocked on 3 counts. Gloria Allred, the attorney for one of the victims, said that her client is 100% committed to testifying again. It's unclear whether the prosecution will seek a retrial on those counts that the jury was deadlocked on, but you know that's difficult, right? I mean, first of all, putting victims through, notwithstanding what Ms. Allred said about her client, putting them through the rigors and emotional trauma of a trial again, as we saw, they were called out by the defense. That's not easy to put women through who have bravely come forward. So what do you think the chances are that, A, they'll be retried, and B, there'll be a successful conviction the second time?
I think the chances are low that he'll be retried. And I think that just goes back to the fact that Harvey Weinstein is essentially serving life sentence in prison. And it may not matter to the prosecution if they get an additional 40 years or so. It will matter to the victim. Those victims, I'm sure they've already bravely come out against him. So they probably want to see the fruits of their labor in a conviction for the acts against them, but they should find some solace in the fact that he is convicted. He was convicted in Los Angeles. There's basically no chance he's leaving prison while he's alive. So even testifying and not getting the conviction on their counts probably did help the jury get to the conviction on the counts that they did because of the modus operandi actions that we've discussed.
Rachel Fiset, who is the F in the middle of the ZFZ law firm, lawyer and legal analyst, thank you so much for explaining this to our listeners and viewers on the SERMAblast.
Thanks for having me.